Hey, everybody, this is David Paul, the host of the Capital Stack podcast. Today, I am with Bogdan Constantin, who is the founder and CEO of Voxie Chat, which is a text marketing platform based out of Atlanta, Georgia. Recently raised a whopping $25 million. He was the previously founder of a startup called Menguin, that's penguin with a P, or with an M, get it, where he was a CMO, CTO. He grew the business exponentially from 2014 to 2017 before it was acquired by George Zimmer's Generation Tux. This $25 million round for Voxie Chat was funded by Atlanta's best and finest with Nora Mosley Partners, Wayne Kellum, Engage, Circadian Ventures, Andy Powell, and David Cummings. Bogdan, how you doing?
Doing great, David. Thanks for having me on. One special shout out: our lead on this most recent round was Tom Noonan, his family office. He's a legacy top Atlanta entrepreneur, one of the best entrepreneurs I've ever met. He was the founder and CEO of a company called ISS. He took it public. So the classic entrepreneurial story of starting a company, IPOing, and then it eventually was acquired by IBM. He led the most recent round with participation from all of our investors, and it's been a fun ride.
So is he a better investor than Wayne?
You can't load me up that way, dude. I would honestly tell you that they're about as equal in terms of credible operator entrepreneur that I've ever met. They're different, right, in terms of the advice and the interactions, but they're both just incredible. They're just like legends. Every time I'm around them, and I have a million questions, and I just learn so much, and they're so unbelievably helpful. So in terms of their ability to give back and engage and just be helpful is unparalleled. They're both phenomenal.
Do you have two preferred board seats or just one preferred board seat?
Two.
Two? Okay. Yeah, that's great. And you like having, they're both the financial guys, or excuse me, both are operators that are sitting on your board.
That's exactly it. Yeah. So we've got a number of operators on the board specifically for this reason. I think in general, right, that folks who have been in the trenches, been there, done that, have a ton of advice, both good and bad, right? Where they erred, what they did well, what they wish they would have done better. So it's been invaluable to me to be able to have those types of folks to pick their brains, not just on the board, but really kind of our entire investor base. You mentioned some great names on there. Kyle's on our board from Sales Loft, but also folks like David Cummings, right, who's in a same Atlanta, just incredible entrepreneur, built an incredible business here, but also just a variety of those types of folks. Andy Powell at Call Rail, that have just been instrumental in our success, and folks that I can access and ask questions. How did you think about this? Who should I talk to about that? It's been awesome.
Yeah, no, I agree. All those names are exceptional operators, specifically in MarTech, right? I mean, like David Cummings and Andy Powell, they're legends in Atlanta when it comes to MarTech. I was listening to a podcast this week, the All In podcast. You listen to that one?
Yeah, I have.
And they were talking about just board members and adding value. And I think Wayne would be the exception to the rule, because Wayne Kellum, who actually recommended you on this podcast, when I asked him, you were kind of like second best. Wayne was like, "Yeah, I'm trying to stay out of the limelight. You should ask Bogdan." So, but he
You
said
need to get
very
him
high.
on. You need to get him
Yeah,
on.
I'm going to get him on. He's just
going to drop bombs.
Well, yeah, I'm just going to do it at 3 a.m. when he's usually awake. So
there you go. That's the best way to do it. Then he has no way to get out of the meeting.
No excuse. But I mean, when you have a versatile group of companies, I mean, Wayne has been the CEO of several different companies in several different sectors, and in which case you have a plethora of different experiences that you can draw from. I do find somehow, maybe this is a little biased because I don't have a giant startup exit, right, that I can claim my name to. Maybe I'm just a little jealous. But part of me thinks that, the one guy that was a CEO founder that did scale his company, that exited, can they be a hindrance to a CEO and a founder with not having a bunch of different data points to go by?
So I would tell you that probably, and this is obviously my view, 10 years ago likely would have been the case, right? Because it was a very different world in software and SaaS. But today, in particular, things move so quickly that, so exactly what you just called out, Kyle Porter, 10-year journey at SalesLoft, just had a massive investment from Vista Partners, just a rocket ship of growth. He told me something that I think about almost on a daily basis. He told me, and almost verbatim his exact words, Bogdan, until I realized that I had to grow faster than the set of my own experiences, I wasn't growing at the exponential rate that I had to keep up with the business the way that I needed to as a CEO. And once I started unlocking things like mentors, my network, books, and just learning from the experiences of others, that's when things went next level for me, for him at SalesLoft. And I've kept that in the back of my head, because what he basically said is, if you are going to rely on you making your own mistakes to learn from, you're not going to be able to scale this business the way that you want to, and the way that the market's calling for you, based on kind of what we're seeing from an indication and a product market fit perspective. You've got to learn from everybody and anybody that has been before you. But to that point, what I've seen in SaaS, these call it past 5 or so years, is that people are borrowing from everything, from the consumer landscape, from literally any aspect of distribution, because things have changed so dramatically. You mentioned MarTech. We have customers now that gauge the efficacy of our product based on how the UI looks, right? That wasn't heard of even a couple of years ago in SaaS, right? It was all about MVP, minimum viable design, etc. Now it's the other way around, right? You've got to consumerize it, like the Robinhood app on your phone or whatever. It's going to be a delightful interaction, because everybody's become a consumer, and they all buy like they're on Amazon or some e-commerce site, basically.
So Kyle Porter, he basically said, for me to paraphrase, that you need to constantly be making yourself uncomfortable, in which case you do not know what you're doing in order to, or else because you're not moving fast enough.
Correct. And then learning how to overcome that discomfort, master it, and then go on to the next thing, right? Basically, my job, if I'm doing it, if we're doing this right, should be changing every roughly 6 to 8 months, right?
Cool.
The things I'm focused on, etc. But
so I agree with that completely. And then being able to put yourself out there to know that you're not the smartest guy in the room
is exactly it, right? And so back to your original question, do you get more out of a guy like Wayne, right, who's seen so many movies and so many different industries? And it's funny, I'll be talking to him, and it's like he knows the next 5 things I'm going to say, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can paraphrase, and we can get to, okay, here's the problem, here's how we look at it. And that's just, he's brilliant in that way. But the flip side is having, somebody like, for example, going back to Kyle or Andy for that matter, not only have they kind of been in this one massive multi-billion-dollar from 0 to 100, 1,000 SaaS company that they've built, but they always have their expertises and their niches. So even though, to Wayne's point, he's seen so many movies, he's seen so many companies, these guys in particular often have areas of focus or expertise. Andy with product, Kyle really with organizational management, culture, and also distribution and sales, right? That I can really go, and it very quickly becomes apparent where they're experts, and I can go and leverage those expertises. David Cummings, similarly, he's just an expert when it comes to organizational design, company design, incentives alignment, right? How do you make sure that everybody's rowing towards the same goal? How do you beat that drum so much that you get tired of it? That's when they start realizing, and the team really picks up on it. So once you figure out who to leverage for what, it makes a big deal, even if they haven't, done it 1,000 times like Wayne.
So let's talk about, I want to talk about Voxie, but first, before that, you grew up in Arkansas?
I didn't. That's a really good question. So
that's a lie. That's like a dirty rumor someone's been spreading around.
I wish that, no, I lived in Arkansas with my last company, actually. So TLDR, started Menguin in Atlanta. So it was an online tuxedo rental company, like the Netflix of tux rental, massive $2.2 billion industry that we were trying to disrupt. And I candidly tried to raise money in Atlanta in 2014. This was not a consumer town back in the day. And
you had better luck in Arkansas, where there's a lot of consumer investors.
I'll actually tell you how this happened, but one last thing, it didn't help that I would go to investor pitches in a tuxedo. That was probably not the best idea, but this is my first venture. I had a lot to learn. fundamentally what happened is there was a gentleman in Arkansas that had exited his company, General Atlantic, e-commerce business in the cowboy boot space. He'd actually built a variety of niche companies, had a massive exit, and he partnered with basically the top players in the state, and they were building an e-commerce mecca there, right? The most prominent families that had the multi-billion-dollar retail chains, et cetera, out there. And he was building effectively an e-commerce investment fund, and as part of that, the thesis was that we were going to build in Walmart's backyard because of all the leverages and synergies that were there. But to do that, you had to be out there. And we were actually the first investment out of that fund. And candidly, at that point, we'd done $20,000 in revenue for that business. It's me, two other gentlemen, and they believed in us after 5-6 months of fundraising when we were hearing crickets. Right? They saw the vision, and coincidentally, as soon as we got there, growth blew up in terms of acquisition, and everything worked out really well. We had a great return for that fund. We were one of the first exits, kind of in that that startup ecosystem perspective, and the whole state leaned in. So it was really cool. So I lived there for about 2.5 years before exiting the business, and then after kind of finished my 18 months there, moved back to Atlanta. But to your long version of saying I'm not from Arkansas, I've got a bunch of great ties to the state, both the Little Rock and the Northwest Arkansas area where I lived, and a huge fan of that state. And I think it's got a ton of potential, both from a talent and a growth perspective.
Awesome. So, did you have a co-founder for that business?
For Menguin, the direct-to-consumer business? Yeah, I had two, actually. Yeah. Both guys, actually, neither of them were from Arkansas. Same type of deal. One was from Dallas, one was from the Detroit area. They'd both met at Indiana University, and I met them after they graduated, and I ended up coming on as the third co-founder as we were scaling that business.
Awesome. And then, that must have been some pretty. Were you the first guys that did the mail order tuxedo?
Yeah, we were. So there was another competitor that launched about 6 months after us. They raised way more money in California on the West Coast. But yeah, we were the first guys out, which is kind of crazy back in the day. Figuring out how to fit guys on the internet. V1 of that, we'd send every guy a specific DVD, and they had to be in front of their webcam, and they had to do specific things with the DVD to get bodies. We invested so much in this fit technology, and what we found is guys didn't want to use it. They'd rather just guess their sizes.
Rather guess, right?
For replacements. Yeah, so that's what ended up happening. But yeah, we were the first guys out to do that. Actually, that business kind of officially started at the end of 13, and then we went live with it in 2014.
Yeah, so I just rented a tux. My nephew, who is in his late 20s, wanted a black tie wedding, and I'm like, dude, who the hell do you think you are? I mean, are you serious? You want a bunch of people to come to your wedding in a black tie? You're such a punk. And I'm not gonna buy a tux, right? So I actually just rented a tux, and this kid's wedding literally looked like Justin Bieber got married. It was the most insane thing I've ever seen.
He's going to have photos for the rest of what we figured out early on, not to get too much into consumer and that old industry I was in, but the only thing people care about, David, in particular, the bride is the most important part of that wedding, as you know, right? It's her day. The only thing they care about is how the photos look.
Yep.
So when we went down this decision tree of what really matters, all of our photography, our digital assets were always immaculate. The guys looked great. We had all these taglines. We fit everybody. They looked like James Bond, all of this stuff. But that was the only thing that mattered to the bride, who was the ultimate decision maker. So I bet everybody looked awesome, right?
Yeah. No, I guess they did. I didn't go because I got COVID. So
no.
I know. I missed the wedding, and so I returned the tux. But yeah, it was amazing how easy that was. It's cool that you were one of the forefathers of that business. So you ended up exiting that business. It was a good outcome for all. Tell me about the transition into that and Voxie Chat.
Yeah.
Is it Voxie Chat or is it Voxie?
Just Voxie.
Okay.
Our legacy URL was Voxie Chat, and then about a year in, we were able to acquire Voxie.com. But from the get-go, it was always going to be Voxie. And just for reference, and people always ask me, hey, why is it called Voxie? Voxie means to grow in Norwegian and Swedish. So now we'll get all meta and talk about why I chose that name. And it's really, the perspective was this. You think about how businesses engage their customers and kind of the evolution from, direct mail to phone to email. Fundamentally, all those mediums have been talking at the consumer, right? And we're at this kind of precipice in kind of that business to consumer communication where you suddenly have the ability to talk with the customer. And the thesis that we have at Voxie is that in the future, for a brand to grow, which is what Voxie means in Norwegian, it must do one thing. It must be able to talk with all of its customers at scale, build one-to-one relationships, learn their likes, preferences, and everything in between, and build that relationship. Otherwise, they will not be around in 5 years, 10 years, right? Because if they can't build that relationship in this new world with all the changes that we're seeing, they're not going to be able to continue growing and sustaining. So the thesis is that Voxie is the bridge between that business and its end customer by connecting them through conversations. We started with text message, so SMS, right? So we're a conversational texting and automation platform, right? So as a business before you used email, they use phone, we can augment those channels and drive dramatically better results at scale for our partners and customers.
So how'd you come up with this concept
It's a really good question.
from online tuxedos? And do you have co-founders in this one?
So no, this was all me, one man show. But and the flip side of that is I have a rock star team, right? That is all extremely, well incentivized and aligned on helping us scale and grow that business. And I've got also partners. Going back to how we founded the business. So we talked about, hey, we grew, we had this exit, right, in Arkansas, all of that stuff. How all that happened, David, was kind of a funny story. It basically started with this really interesting concept of we were a direct-to-consumer business. And if you remember back in the old days, 2014, 2015, 2016, what consumer businesses would do is they run ads on Facebook, on Google, and all these different mediums. And then they would drive you to a web page where they'd have what's called a landing page or a lead form that gets some information from you to put you in their email drip campaigns. And then they would email drip you for X time until you purchased. And the entire e-commerce flow was basically a math formula. What happened to Voxie, why Voxie exists is that problem at Menguin became exacerbated for me about 2 years in. We had record growth. And basically my third year, we started seeing massive declines in email. I invested heavily in email marketing automation. I had an incredibly sophisticated program. And I used to go around bragging about how great my email open rates were to their e-commerce founders, because
that used to be the best, right? E-commerce was the best tool.
Yeah, that's exactly it. We were averaging mid 20% open rates at scale, on email, which was unheard of.
Because you owned the data. You had the direct access to the customer. You didn't have to go through a platform like Facebook or.
That's exactly it. Once I acquired them, I could build that relationship. Well, something interesting started happening in 2016. All of these ad platforms and all of the email platforms started changing their algorithms, their filtering. So almost overnight in 2016, I started seeing that my email open rates had basically tanked. They were sub 10% for the first time ever. And I freaked out, right? I was panicking, trying to figure out what had happened. And overnight, Google had rolled out a new filtering mechanism on their Gmail product where my emails were no longer going to David's inbox. They were going to promotions and spam, right? Even with whitelisted.
Awesome.
It was awesome, right? So now suddenly,
especially even if you opted in, right, it's still going to spam.
That's exactly it. So now my main growth driver, an entire acquisition apparatus of running ads, acquiring your email, drip nurturing until you bought, which in my industry could be 6 to 9 months of being relevant, basically dried up overnight. So I went down this rabbit hole of how do I get in front of this customer? I'm competing with the Blockbuster of my space, right? The brick and mortars, the men's warehouses of the world. And when David goes into a men's warehouse, he has this great engaging conversation with the salesperson. They take him, they show him the wares, he gets to try it on, and he basically leaves with a tuxedo. I was trying to emulate that experience where my customer lived digitally. And the question I kept having was, where are they talking with their family, with their friends? How do I interject myself there? And overwhelmingly, it was apparent in towards the end of 2016, it was through text message, right? But all the texting products out, and it's still very much the case today, were those 5-digit codes, one-way blast, text dog to 55566. Here's a spammy offer. You couldn't have a back and forth where you'd build the relationship, ask David open-ended questions, learn what he was looking for, and then direct him to a portion of your site. So I was trying to figure that out. And when I couldn't, I literally just grabbed my iPhone and I just started texting a variety of leads, seeing what happened. When I sent open-ended questions like, hey, David, wavy hand emoji. I'm Bogdan, your personal stylist over here at Menguin. You swung by our website yesterday. Thank you, exclamation mark. Just wanted to check in. I noticed you were looking at some of our blue suits. Which one were you thinking was for you and which one was for your groomsmen? Question mark. Notice, no spam, no link. I'm trying to ask you an open-ended question to qualify.
Customized.
Highly personalized, one-to-one, 100% not scalable. I ended up texting about 162 people in about a 2-hour period. And for the next 2 hours, I get about a 70% response rate. They're coming in fast with questions like, when do I get it? How does this work? Questions that my emails used to answer, right? But even then, my top performing emails, only a quarter of the customers were opening.
Well,
Here,
right, and you would have an FAQ on that email, and it
correct.
wasn't a direct question. It was just kind of this canned, FAQ list, right? And
Right.
what are the odds that someone's going to read through that to get all their questions answered?
Very low, right? And suddenly I had this conduit to the customer and I could instantly make recommendations saying, oh, of course we can do that. We're the only ones that can do that. You need to do this now if you want this by this date. And I'd give them little links to the website and I'd check the next day and they'd have done the action. They'd have put their credit card on file. They'd have done whatever I was looking for. And I was enamored with this back and forth. It was obviously exhausting, right? And, I was doing this a good part of my day, as a founder for the next 4 weeks. And then suddenly I have my business partner pull the results, right? Our COO. And I'm like, hey, I've been running this cohort. I tagged all these folks. Can you get me order level data? I want to see what the heck's going on the flip side. How many of them are actually buying versus just BSing me? And I almost fell out of my chair and I had to go confirm that the data was right. And he'd, been an equities trader on Wall Street. He almost looked at me as though I'd insulted his intellect. How dare you think I can't do Excel, Bogdan?
Right.
That was my job. But once we, confirmed that, we closed almost 50% of that business, which we'd never done to such an extreme amount before. It was such a compelling story and result that I said, okay, I got to figure out where this really stops scaling. Because if this works to the tune of X million dollars, I can just build out a massive call center, right? If I can build the use case. So where does marginal revenue equal marginal cost? Is it going to be 3CS reps? I had 17 in my call center at the time. So I go to Walmart and I do the most unscalable / scalable thing ever. I buy 34 straight talk wireless cell phones. I bring them back to the office. They're these really crummy LGs.
They probably thought you were like a member of the Taliban.
That's right, or something, right? Like here I am buying these really crummy, LGs.
From some kind of like terrorist cell communication network.
That's right. Buying 1 month of text and internet service. And I basically gave each rep 2 phones. And I hold myself up in the customer service room and we played with everything, with copy, what we say, when we say it. If I text David and he doesn't respond, how long do I wait until I text him again? What do I say to get him to re-engage? Fast forward 2 months in, explosion of growth, off the charts. Very quickly, we realized, hey, we're going to have some major inventory constraints. We can't handle this. I thought we maybe get a couple $100,000, dollars out of these. And it's the other way around. We're looking at possibly, double-digit millions that are going to start flowing through this because this channel is working so well. So then, let's, fast forward how I get, acquired. I go looking for inventory. They see the growth. George Zimmer buys the business. And I spent the next 1.5 years effectively trying to scale Bogdan's conversational thing out of our massive call centers, right? How do I build one-to-one at real scale when I have, I don't want to say unlimited ad dollars, but significantly larger ad dollars than I had before, right? And we kept running into challenges around scaling the CS team because at that point, I'd have a back and forth conversation with David and I'd learn all these things. When his wedding date is, how many groomsmen, colors,
where's the knowledge transfer, right?
It was supposed to be going to our CRM, which was Salesforce.
No.
It wasn't. Even more so, David wouldn't respond and the reps were supposed to follow up. And they get so overwhelmed with conversations, they wouldn't follow up at the right time. So the wheels were basically falling off the bus. And about 1.5 years in, I'm getting very frustrated trying to solve this challenge because when it works, we're on a roll, rocket ship. And then as soon as it breaks, it's one of these, right? We're doing a roller coaster, if you will. So I become obsessed that this is the future. And then in the future, all brands are going to have to talk with their customers, where the customer lives. And overwhelmingly at that time and today, it's still text or SMS. So I leave, my great job to go build that product, which is very much what Voxie is today, conversational texting and automation platform, not just for sales and marketing, but for any business messaging or business use case where before you needed to rely on phone and email to get the job done. You can now augment, replace with Voxie and drive dramatically higher results because our AI now understands, when David's birthday is or how many kids he orders takeout for, whatever the business need is, pulls out that relevant information, transforms it, appends it to his profile, dynamically drops them in the right segment for future engagement, but also pushes that data to the business's CDP, CRM, email platform, data lake, right?
What's a
In real
CDP?
customer data platform. So it's effectively like a filtering tool in a lot of ways, right? It sits on top of a CRM and brings in additional data from a variety of different sources, so you can do additional filtering. Effectively, all of that is now being pushed back to the organization. So what we're collecting is what we call zero-party data. First-party data is things that maybe David I can infer upon or make inferences based on his purchases. Zero-party data is straight from the horse's mouth. I asked David what color shoes he wants. I asked David when his wedding anniversary is, and he told me, and I understood it, right? And I have the direct data. I don't have to make assumptions. There's no algorithms from Facebook or whatever. It's straight from the horse's mouth, and I can intake that data at scale. I can have a one-to-one conversation with a million Davids at the same time and give them each a differentiated experience based on what they tell me or don't tell me, right? So that scale is incredibly powerful for organizations, because now you have a conduit, a direct back and forth with this customer that you can actively manage, and you don't have to have the Bogdan problem, right, where the wheels fall off the bus. And that supercharges the business in terms of what it can do.
That sounds incredible. So tell me, like, how did you, because obviously there has to be some kind of natural language processing and sentiment
Yeah,
technology underneath all of this.
yeah. That's a great question. So
And you're using a bunch of different types of applications and products based on the consumers that you sell. So how do you train these models to do what you need them to do, and find the fringe cases? If you could give some examples, that would be super helpful.
I'd love to. So you're spot on, David. And I'll be very transparent with you. It's all about raw conversational data. So very early on, it was not anywhere near as good as it is today. Today, we like to say we can automate anywhere between 90 to 95% of a business's interactions off the get-go. And
Whoa.
then I know it's pretty crazy, and I'll explain why in a second. And then that, call it remaining 5 to 10%, are those edge cases, right? We either need more statistical significance, or we shift to what we call a complex sale model, where we shift to a live human, either in our state-of-the-art message hub where we've got thousands of reps, or phone, live chat, wherever the business wants to support that type of complex engagement, we can do that as well. But off the bat, once we had enough conversational interactions in the English language for the US and Canadian consumer, we were able to deploy the same model. And now it's obviously learning over time, X, Y, and Z, right? But the majority of those gains we've realized, and the perfect example of this is the word totes. If you're talking to a 16-year-old female, let's say that, and you're looking for a positive sentiment, yes or no answer, and they respond with the word totes, as though, are you looking for a new pair of jeans? And they respond with the word totes.
Totes, Totes, right?
That's
Not
right.
toast.
That's
Totes.
right. TOTES. V1 of our NLU engine, which is in-house, custom built, V1 of that engine would have not understood, no compute. It would have basically failed, and we would have had a failback routine. Put it in front of a human, shift the conversation. But after enough observations, it now knows that totes equals positive sentiment, yes, and is able to action that data appropriately to say, awesome, here's the best pair of pants I'd recommend for you, Mrs. Customer, or whatever, right? But early stages, we didn't have that. And until we trained the model with enough raw conversational data, that was a bit of a challenge. And how we overcame that was, traditionally, when you think about who had that kind of data, whether it was the Amazons, the Facebooks of the world, right? And they have great products. It was always telling a voice bot what to do. It wasn't actually how Americans talk back and forth. Because one of the novels of our product, David, is that we're texting from 10-digit numbers, and there's always a persona. You're always having a back and forth. You think you're talking to a human. And at any point in time, we can route you to a human. But we're trying to emulate that brand or business's best customer service representative, their best experience possible, whether in store, call center, etc. So it's delightful. So there's humor, there's emojis, they'll reply with giffies sometimes, right? But it looks and feels personalized. So until we got enough data, that was a challenge. And once we did, it was next level for us.
Dude, if your bot started sending me emojis, I would think that it was flirting with me. And then
yeah,
I mean, that happens all the time, doesn't it?
You would probably flirt back because you wouldn't be a bot. You think you were engaging with Jenny, the store manager
Right.
of your local whatever, and likely, at any point in time, we can route you there. We've built a conversational flow to mimic what Jenny most likely does to her customers, and actually engages that customer to elicit the best response, to get them to buy, to give that 10 out of 10, whatever the the brand is trying to optimize. That's what we do. So it always looks and feels human.
So have
And
you
we
ever?
do get that.
So how many times have someone sent a selfie right back to your
You'd be
technology?
surprised. It's nowhere near as often as you would think. It's always more so a what else can you help with? I love you guys' service.
Yeah.
People always kind of bias towards hey or go towards. I bet there's some crazy stuff. We work with top tier brands, mid market enterprise businesses, and it's for the most part 99.99% super on brand and appropriate. Even if they're having a positive experience and the customer had a bad one with the brand, they're super forthcoming. And they'll say things like, I really appreciate this outreach. You seem lovely, Jenny. And we made Jenny up, but you seem lovely, Jenny. I want to let you know I had a really negative experience last time I ordered XYZ, and I don't think I'm going to shop with you guys. The business didn't have that data before. They didn't know any of this. So now one of our workflows can say, I'm so sorry to hear that, David. That is not how we do business around here. I'd love to make this up to you. And then give them options, whatever that kind of triggered customer journey or workflow is, or route them directly to a customer service representative, a live human that can triage that for them as well, right? So they have that data now. They have that knowledge to action.
So I said a dirty word. I said the B word, bot, right? So tell me, tell me the difference between this technology and a traditional bot.
It's a great question. So a traditional bot will basically take anything you respond with as an input. So the classic example is you're talking to a live chat bot on a website, and the first field is what? Hi, nice to meet you. What's your name? And there's a field for name. And if you respond with, hey, what's up? My name's David Paul. It'll say, nice to meet you. Hey, what's up? My name's David Paul. Right? It's an attribute-driven system. We built a true natural language understanding system. Our bot.
That's NLU.
That's NLU. It's not a bot per se, right? It's an ML AI system that says, okay, I'm looking for a first name and a last name if it's presented to me. So if David says something like, pleasure to meet you, Jenny, my friends call me David. It understands syntax, can pull out David, and if it has a certain confidence interval, appends to your profile in real time via API, creates that profile somewhere else or updates it if it already exists. And now it'll respond with, great to meet you, David. What can I do for you, right? How can I help? That NLU is the game changer, right? Otherwise, you're basically using a live chat bot that just has an open ending and whatever.
Which is a commodity, right?
It's a commodity at this point,
everyone's
right?
got that.
Yeah, and I want to push back that we don't necessarily believe in building bots. This is not a bot-driven system. We have some people that call it that, right? It's effectively an automation-driven system that at certain points automates conversation that a human would have wanted to engage with, but it didn't make sense, right? They couldn't efficaciously do it at scale. But at any point in time, we can put you in front of a human. So we have customers that say all the time, you're going to replace my humans. And I say, no. We want to give your humans superpowers to do the things that they most love, the creative problem solving, the connection, the community. We want to automate the things that they wish they could do quickly and efficiently, but often they can't, right? We want to focus them on the stuff that really moves the needle.
Yeah, they're Tony Stark, you're the suit, right?
That's right, exactly. I'm going to steal that from you.
There you go.
Iron Man.
Yeah, you are Jarvis, right?
That's right.
You're the AI, and they are Tony Stark. So that's really really interesting. So knowing that you need to have data to make this commercially viable, how did you balance that with the need to grab customers and to show traction in the market because you took venture capital?
Yeah, that's a great question. So really two ways, right? It's an integration play at that point. You either have an existing integration with an existing platform, whether it's a point of sale, email, CRM, et cetera, that has that data that you can bring in and action, or you find an easy way to ingest it. We did both. So we have a number of, top tier one integrations with world-class partners, but also that have a lot of that data. We also do what we call the transformer. A lot of our larger customers still prefer to send data via SFTP, effectively, encrypted CSV that's sent at preset intervals, right? We now have effectively on our end this transformer or an easy way to map that incoming data and route it appropriately, and we can spin that up. Customer spends 15 minutes setting that up on their end, someone from IT, and on our end, one of our implementation experts spends 15 to 20 minutes mapping it within our app, and then at that point we've got a smooth flow of data. And then on the flip side, we work with them to map the net new fields they want So as I now have David's birthday, it goes back where it needs to appropriately so the business can triage it or whatever they need, right, to better engage the next interaction. So it was a data play. But even before that, to be honest with you, David, what we did is we invested heavily in list growth and subscriber growth tools. Most of our brands have never really texted or done it compliantly. We have a variety of patent pendings on how to acquire someone compliantly, from a QR code, an ad unit on Facebook, a pop-up on your webpage. We can compliantly bring them in to a compliant text conversation and then actually ask that zero-party data, get the relevant information that makes that business's next offer, message, whatever, so much more powerful and personalized, and dramatically outperforms things like email.
I understood about 85% of that, but we're gonna move on.
Sorry, I went off on
No, you're geeking out. I love it. I love it.
data, data, and making it really easy for them to grow their customer list, because most of them don't actually have phone numbers, or they've not made it a mandatory field. And what we're seeing today is one phone number for a business is worth about 10 emails in terms of revenue generated, right? So suddenly that shift changes to, okay, phone is now my unique identifier and my most viable traction point. So helping them build that and then marry any revenue and customer data so we can build that profile for them over time.
So NLU, natural language. What was the third word?
Understanding.
Natural language understanding. Is that a category that's out there right now, or is that a new
There is.
category?
It absolutely is, right? It's kind of an offshoot or derivative of that traditional NLP, but they all kind of fall under that machine learning data model, right? And it's all about mining for the right data with the right understanding or intent. So it's an attribute based system still.
Awesome. So tell me about the process of working with your early customers, because it's everyone wants to say, like, how does Voxie do it today?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And how you do it today is a series of iterations of how you did it earlier on. So for the listeners that are listening and saying, hey, I want to build, some natural language understanding with certain applications with my customers, how did you do it back then so they can, hopefully scale and become a great company like yours?
Great question. So I mentioned, I kind of started this by saying Voxie, we want to help all businesses talk with their customers. Having that natural feedback loop was the key, David. So our earliest customers, we were meeting with them weekly, iterating, getting product feedback, and candidly, we incentivized them with very low rates. Being very upfront about what we were building. It was brand new. This wonky guy named Bogdan was pitching them on something that nobody had heard of before, right? But we basically built a really tight feedback loop and asked them to be our innovation partners. So our first 10 customers effectively paid very little for the service, but agreed to let us iterate, make mistakes, and optimize the platform for their needs. And that was kind of that step one impetus that got us to that level of repeatability. Once we had those 10 customers and we saw what we call the playbooks, were the things that mattered the most to them, we invested heavily in making those repeatable, right? And then finding other customers that had similar pain points in that consumer adjacent industries, right? That we could then go out and sell those same use cases and pain points.
So Voxie positions itself as a marketing tech platform that sits within many different verticals, but it seems to me from what you just said and by your customer list that you do have specific market segments that work really well for you. So can you talk a little bit about that and how you identified that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So people call us a marketing technology platform. I call us a customer communication platform. Marketing is just one of the functions that we do. We've mapped out everything a business has to do to stay viable and can communicate with its customers. There's the support side, there's the business process management side, there's internal communications,
Fair enough. Yep.
all of those things. We want to own all of them. We often are a wedge or an entry point into marketing because that's where most brands want, right? I want to grow there, but suddenly I'm giving you efficiencies on the support side, et cetera. So going back to kind of that original point, it's really tied to, I have a problem, email and phone, I see are declining. The world as I know it today is fundamentally changing, right? And there's going to be a tectonic shift in the future. Can Voxie position me properly to solve that problem?
Okay. Awesome. So tell me, you just raised a bunch of capital. What's the next step? I mean, how much did you raise last round? $6 million?
$7 million.
7 million. So, did you have a lot of cash in the bank still? And
Yeah, no, we had plenty of runway. We were doing really well. We also had, abilities to draw on things like debt facilities, et cetera. Candidly, what happened is we had an awesome 2021. We grew, a ton. And what started happening, David, is we started seeing even more. So remember, Bogdan, enterprise buyer, really was the ICP for this product. I couldn't find it. I had a very opinionated view of what we wanted to build. And then when COVID hit, a lot of the enterprise brands we would have wanted to sell to, as you can imagine, were reeling, struggling.
they
What
stopped
started
buying.
happening
Yeah.
what started happening in 21 was we started having a ton of inbound interest from some of the largest businesses in the world that had a lot of the problems that we had solved or built for, right? We were working with a lot of mid-market brands, and we just saw this explosion of demand in the enterprise space, right? In particular, businesses that had large call center sales forces or large amounts of traffic they needed to engage and convert, right? In commoditized industries like retail, like specialty service, like food, right? And we started getting a ton of interest from some of these larger enterprise brands. And then our mid-market sector was kind of just scaling even faster than we thought possible. So we had plenty of funding, and I was talking to our board as we were building our 22 plan about going faster. And kind of the conversation naturally segued to what would it look like if we, had, it was effectively, call it a preemptive round. What would it look like if we had a fast close round that further capitalize Voxie to let us go even faster, right, in specific departments like product and engineering, so we could innovate faster, so we could ship more integrations, we could scale up our service team to support broader enterprise growth, and then, of course, spin up our go-to-market team and capture even more of the demand we were seeing. We think it's early innings in what we're doing. We're very much positioned as the leader in the space, right? But to do that, kind of that market share approach, right? How do we help as many brands as quickly as possible that don't even know they have this problem or that we exist? I mean, I hear so many call recordings these days of brands that are like, I wish I'd known about you guys a year ago, 2 years ago. Where were you? XYZ. And a part of that is we know it's still early innings, so distribution, go to market is going to be a huge investment for us. So scaling up our sales team, marketing team to just further get the word out. Most folks don't even know that a solution like ours exists.
So how do you educate the market? What's your go-to-market playbook?
Great question. So it's been a function of a couple of things, right? One, it's been heavily outbound today because it's still so new. But two, what we're seeing now is we work with very, very large brands, and those engagements, those texts are out there. And now people are starting to come inbound saying, I experienced you on so-and-so. I saw you so-and-so. I have a similar need. Can you help? So we think as we get broader and broader awareness and we start publishing more of it, kind of being more vocal with things like white paper, webinars, kind of the standard marketing activities, but also really harping on the differentiation versus what people are used to with the one-way spam texts, right? And they start experiencing it in the ecosystem, they're going to naturally show up and come to us, especially as products like email continue to struggle, and phone, of course. So it's kind of the classic outbound, build and grow the market share as more and more of our customers tell their friends, about the value of the product. We're now getting tagged on places like LinkedIn for innovation, and our customers love the product and kind of what they're seeing, and they're saying I had these incredible results, and they're sharing. So we expect that marketing inbound flywheel to start spinning pretty dramatically this year, and obviously we're going to invest heavily in things like events and webinars and just further educating the market.
Does the market know they have a problem with this?
The market knows they 100% have a problem. They don't know that a solution yet exists that can solve it the way that Voxie can. They know that their existing legacy communications channels are declining, but what they've done is said, I'll just spend more money on ads and I'll just get more leads top of funnel.
Right, top of the funnel. Right, let's just spend more money.
And I don't know if you've seen kind of recent privacy changes with brands like Apple, and now what Google has announced with Android, right? Those ad platforms don't work anywhere near as well anymore. Almost overnight, when Apple changes privacy regulations for Facebook, customer acquisition costs skyrocketed 2, 3, 4, 6 times what a brand was spending before.
You can't target them.
You can't target them anymore, right? So suddenly it becomes even more important to nurture and convert the audience, not only that you have, but build that better relationship with that audience, because lifetime value has always been the name of the game. But now the top of funnel became significantly more expensive. So they've got to invest in a product like ours. So timing is really on our side as we kind of espouse and tell the story and help educate these brands about, the changing ecosystem and what we can do for them.
That's incredible. So what keeps you up at night?
It's a really good question. Talent. It is always that, right? We've got to grow. We have a number of mantras internally. One of them is A+ championship level players. If you've seen The Last Dance with Michael Jordan, right? Huge sports fan. I want to build a championship caliber team here, and we're constantly looking for top tier, world class talent, and we want to find it. We need it here desperately, urgently. We want driven, self starting, positive, collaborative individuals that want to fail, that want to learn, that want to make mistakes, and they want ownership, right? We're a no BS, no bureaucracy organization. So we're looking for really talented, motivated folks that we can throw really difficult problems at as we innovate and pioneer this industry. So it's really finding the right folks. I'm spending a number of hours each day, more than a number at this point, outbound recruiting, cold LinkedIning, whatever I need to do, right, to get in front of the folks and help bring on this tier one talent that we're looking for.
Are you remote, or do you do things in the office, or both?
That's a great question. So hybrid, we've got our headquarters in Atlanta. We've then got a base in Boston, base in Denver, where we've got a nexus of A+ players, and then we've also got a number of remote folks as well. So we're non-discriminate there. We'll hire folks wherever they are in the country, but we also are upfront that as the environment kind of as the pandemic subsides, there will be a lot of opportunities for us to get the entire company together in person for fun events. It's one of our core values is having fun as a team, winning as a team. So we do expect to start bringing folks to the offices, especially as things hopefully quiet down and settle down here over the next, call it 6 to 9 months. But hybrid with opportunities in places like Atlanta, Boston, and Denver, where we've got in-office experiences as well, a couple of days a week for folks.
What roles are the hardest to get? Engineers?
It's funny. Yes, engineers, but I will be very honest with you. It's also folks on our strategy and support side, right? So we are doing something really interesting. And I mentioned, how does this work so well? We really partner with our customers, educating them on the value of how we do things. Most of our brands have never talked with their customers before. They've never had the ability to do that. So the educational component, the implementation, onboarding component is a huge, huge aspect of our learning and scaling. So that's been a challenging one, right? Finding folks that have relevant experience or folks that have been in kind of nascent industries that we can bring here and we can leverage their past experiences.
Yeah, because you're going to have to make your customers want to help their and their end customers, and that's a behavioral shift.
Big change management shift, right? So finding those folks is a big priority for us, and then of course engineers, product folks, and then candidly, if we're going to be really honest, is also talent, right? So director and above level talent. As we scale, we want more and more of it, right? People that have built great organizations, been a part of great rocket ships that want to come on here as we continue scaling up those teams.
Okay, that's great. So what companies do you emulate right now from a tech perspective? Like, who do you have a crush on?
Oh gosh. So there's different tiers, right, or categories of companies I want to emulate for different things. I think from a product perspective, I'm going to call out another Atlanta company here in town called Full Story, if you're familiar with them.
I thought you were going to say MailChimp. Thank God you didn't say MailChimp.
No.
I'm so sick of hearing about MailChimp.
Everybody loves MailChimp, but they've got a great product, right? We're great friends at the firm. I know a lot of the leaders there, and they're awesome. But fundamentally, I think Full Story has really nailed their product. I was a former customer in my last business, have gotten to know Scott, and just built a phenomenal organization over there, all around how you make product sticky. And they had a similar problem, educating this customer in the mid-market enterprise, how to do user research, how to understand buying flows, all of these things, right? That's one I we want to learn a lot from. And then another one that I emulate candidly is SalesLoft. They figured out distribution, how to scale their product once it was ready, right? And how to get it in the arms of as many people as possible, and then build that beloved customer base. So I spend a lot of time picking.
They were bought, weren't they?
I think it was an investment. I don't think they were.
They took it's like a
Yeah,
monster round.
yeah, it was just a large investment from Vista, and Kyle's built a phenomenal organization over there. But they have a ton of superpowers. Obviously, great product. We're customers as well. But they figured out how to sell it by marrying it authentically to those pain points, right? That we're also trying to do. So those are two companies I want to emulate heavily.
What about on the marketing and the sales side?
Yeah. On the marketing side, honestly, we're a customer there as well. Gong has done a freaking
Dude, Gong
phenomenal
is
job.
amazing.
See, that's what I want.
Dude,
I
I
want that. Right?
love Gong.
Everybody
Everything
loves
from their
Gong, right?
branding, their content. I mean, it's
It's
incredible.
on the marketing side, they're by far the best. We also have purple as a brand color. So big shout out. I love
Yeah,
any brand that's using purple, right?
it
But
works.
they've done a really, really great job. Candidly, in another market where it's really easy to become commoditized, building that brand, right, and then building that word of mouth. You see, we geek out on Gong. I'm a
Dude,
runner.
we both lit up when we talked about Gong, which
See,
is such a
exactly. I'm
great.
a runner, and I will literally go on runs listening to Gong calls, sales calls, right? So I can leave feedback, notes, etc. As you can tell, I have some unhealthy habits. But that's another product on the marketing side that I very much emulate.
What is how many miles you go a week?
Great question.
Is it that great?
It is because it varies. For me, I like to hit 40. I'll be honest with you, the weather hasn't been that great in Atlanta the last month and a half, and I've barely been hitting like 15. But when hopefully towards the end of this month, early next, as the weather gets a little better, I'll get back to that. So I usually try to hit about 40, which is usually for me anywhere between, call it 4 to 5, 6 to 8 mile runs, right? Depending on day, what I ate the night before. I try to go in the mornings uh,
Mm-hmm.
before the workday starts.
What are you pacing at?
Right now, well, I'm going to be off. Right, my goal is always right about an 8 minute 8:45 per mile is what I try to do.
That's pretty
Uh,
good.
but if I were to do it right now, dude, I'd be shocked if I break 9:30 just because I've been so subpar and I'm doing like these short bursts and they're not as regimented as they should be.
You
Uh,
stretch?
I do. My wife yells at me all this time because with young kids, sometimes if I need to go in the evenings, I'll stretch for 15 minutes before I go for a run. And I've been running. So after I sold the business and from where I was to now, I've lost about 60 pounds. Believe it or not,
Whoa!
through running and obviously healthy diet, etc. But I've never had a running related injury at the amount I run. I alternate shoes, all that stuff, because I stretch for literally 15 minutes. I do the same stretches every time for X amount. I use my phone stopwatch, and my wife will get so frustrated sometimes. She'll be walking out, and she's like, "You're still here? You haven't started your run? The kids are going crazy, right?" So it's pretty funny. But I
I
won't. I
see.
won't
This
do
is
it.
a great learning moment for me because we should have talked about your running in the beginning of the podcast and like how you lost 60 pounds because there's so much to that
That's
that I
right,
think is pretty good. Maybe I'm going to cut this and put this in the beginning because
for sure.
it's pretty good.
But it was literally, it was running, it was watching what I ate, and that was it. But I was obsessed over that texting problem. I was basically living at our office after I sold the business, and I got into a really unhealthy state, right? And kind of woke out of it. A couple of months later, I decided I was going to go build this product, which is Voxie, and probably running helped me reach that clarity.
Oh yeah. No, I used to be 250. I was ginormous. I'm not kidding. Like I was so big and
How did you
it
do
was
it?
yeah,
How'd you get down?
I think first was just kind of exercising and then like got down to like 200 and then like I never could get past 200 and I'm like 5'10. So that's definitely chubby. And and then I got this like bodybuilder like trainer and she just got me like really smart on food.
And
Right.
that's what occurred to me too. Weight loss is like 70% diet,
Oh
right?
yeah. Easy.
And I that had never, as I was getting bigger and bigger, I was still eating the same four things. And I was like, oh, I'll figure out a way to run or do an
Right.
elliptical.
Doesn't
But
do
it was
anything.
running was a part of it, right? You got to get your body moving, all that stuff. But it was for me, it's like 70% diet.
Yeah, running for
Doing
me and
exactly.
any type of exercise really is more for mental health.
Yeah,
So I'm not
exactly,
abusive to my kids and my wife,
exactly.
and then the rest of it is just nutrition. And then when I really got below two, like started to like go beneath 185, and I'm kind of like 175 is when I started incorporating like intermittent fasting. That really worked for me.
So I do IMF now, and I actually did that as I was losing weight, and it was a huge net add for me. I think that plus the diet with the running was the perfect combination for me.
Awesome. Public companies. You own any stocks?
Yeah, so it's I have a number of stocks. I bought everything from Luckin Coffee, which was supposed to be the Starbucks of China, and then they had all those flawed complaints. To I'm a big believer if we're using a SaaS product here at the office, and we believe in it and love it, I should buy it because we see value, even if the markets are knocking it as a lot of what we've seen today. So
Mhm.
I own basically any public stock of a product we're using at Voxie. I have my personal portfolio, and then probably my favorite stock, and this is such a cliche answer, but I think I have a different reason for it, is Apple. And it goes back to that privacy thing we just said. One minute feature change. You now have to give an app like Facebook the ability to see your location, completely change the trajectory of that company. I don't know if you saw, they're not doing well right now.
No,
Obviously, they
they
have a lot of
they
other
got
challenges.
crushed.
Yeah,
They
but
got
think
absolutely
about that.
crushed.
Brands can't spend because Apple changed a privacy setting on the iPhone, right? Like,
The
just think
platform.
about the level of impact, not the phone, not the computer. I'm big Apple fanboy, but just the level of impact that one company has on entire industries. Like, you have to admire that, right? And what Steve Jobs built, obviously, level of innovation is kind of the slope hasn't been as aggressive under Tim Cook, but the execution is just
It's
incredible.
incredible.
Yeah.
I own a ton of Apple. I think Berkshire Hathaway, their whole portfolio is 40% Apple. For a guy that talks about portfolio diversification a lot, I mean, I think you could just throw that out the window because Apple, I mean, I think that was reading that Apple in its entirety, if you just looked at their business units, their AirPods are the biggest headphone manufacturer in their world. Their iWatch or their watch or whatever the hell they call it is the biggest telematics company in the world.
It
Just
doesn't
those product lines.
Isn't that crazy? What they should do is they should buy a country next, and then we can really start seeing what happens, right? But that's probably more of a Steve Jobs idea at this point.
Yeah, totally. It's going to happen. Bogdan, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. We learned so much today about natural language
Understanding NLU,
understanding. There
but
we go.
even more, what key takeaway: brands should talk with their customers. They need to build those relationships, and they need to do it in authentic channels that deliver on one to one. Otherwise, they're likely not going to be here tomorrow. That's the one message. So our mission and vision is to connect the world through conversation. And if brands don't talk, businesses don't talk with their customers, they won't be around in the coming years.
Because you can't trust the platforms. Period. You can't trust them. You can't trust Apple. You can't trust Facebook. You can't trust Google because the bottom line is with the flick of a switch, they can completely cut you off. So
You don't own the
building that.
relationship. They do, right? You've got to build owned relationships and channels that you control. Otherwise, exactly that. There's another one going back to Facebook. Facebook Messenger used to be the hottest thing, right? Every brand had Facebook Messenger. And then a couple of years ago, brands were abusing it and sending a lot of outbound messages to their end subscribers on Messenger. And Facebook's app downloads and app usage started declining. So guess what they did? They put an end to outbound messages, right? And overnight, they killed massive revenue streams for these consumer businesses that relied heavily on, double-digit percentages of their revenue coming from that, those promotions or whatever, right, from those Facebook bots. And brands they can't do that. You have to own the customer relationship, and it's got to be yours in its entirety for life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Bogdan, thank you so much for coming on. We're going to have to come back. I'm going to send you an email. I'm going to send you a term sheet to buy some secondaries from you. It's going to be an incredible offer.
Heck
So
yeah, let's do it.
I know you're still probably eating ramen noodles and you could probably use some cash. So
I'll be honest with you. One of the best pieces of advice I got from entrepreneurs that have raised capital was uh, spend as though you're still at the stage of your last round. And then what Wayne told me to go back to that is you can only burn a dollar once, Bogdan. So make sure you burn it the right way. And he's so spot on.
I like that.
And it's I think about that too, right? Of how are we going to deploy this capital? Just because we raise more money doesn't mean that we get to be more wasteful or more wanting. It's the other way around. How do we make sure that every dollar we invest in our business is a dollar that delights our customers and solves more of their problems?
Absolutely. And always, and don't forget this one, make sure you always sell on the way up.
That's right. That's right.
All
We're,
right,
we're going to be
everybody.
here for quite a while. We've got a lot of building to do. And, the United States is just step one of where we think we're going to be able to take this product and platform.
Absolutely. Everybody, that's the Capital Stack. Bogdan, thanks for so much for coming on. If they want to reach out to you or learn more about Voxie, how's the best way to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. First off, David, thanks so much for having me on. A couple of different ways. At Twitter, Constantin. Feel free to reach out to me there. You want to learn more about Voxie, voxie.com. Otherwise, shoot me a text. If you guys ping me anywhere, I'm always available. You see my number pretty much listed everywhere. Text me anytime.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Talk to you later.
Cheers. Thanks, Dave.